Major, as we speak in the early hours of the 30th day of this war, how far has the IDF progressed in the Gaza Strip, and how far are you from the end game? And militarily speaking, what is your end game?
Thank you for having me. The end game is very clear. The absolute and utter destruction of Hamas's abilities to ever do this havoc, massacre, and rampage again to the people of Israel. Let's not forget that just short of 1 month ago, thousands of Hamas fighters came over the border into Israel and attacked a sleeping, quiet community of men, women, and children and slaughtered them, burned them alive, raped the women who were there. And therefore, for the state of Israel to exist like any other nation, it can only happen with the destruction of Hamas. Towards that goal, we, around 3 weeks ago, began hitting serious Hamas targets inside the Gaza Strip from the air. Following after that, we've included ground forces, naval forces, and engineering. We have to understand that in fighting Hamas, we're not playing by the same rules. We're playing by the rules of war, which include trying to differentiate between civilians and combatants, and terrorists. Hamas plays by the opposite rules. They try to put their civilians in the way of our soldiers. They hide behind them while trying to kill Israeli civilians with rockets. Therefore, the process is incredibly complicated. They're also spread out underneath the ground. What we are doing is moving forward and taking over Hamas positions inside the northern Gaza Strip. We have already gained control of a number of Hamas positions, killed many of their terrorists, including a large number of their battalion commanders. We have taken out a lot of their terror infrastructure, blown up their tunnels, and made a lot of progress. This has come at a cost of the lives of our dear soldiers, but we will continue to do so. And when you ask me how far along we are, I think this is going to be a long road ahead.
You have allegedly hit ambulances in schools. Is it not violation of international laws?
We never, ever target civilians. The ambulances that you were speaking about were ambulances in which our forces identified terror activity, Hamas activity in those ambulances. This is not the first time. We've provided aerial photographs and satellite photographs showing right now that within Hamas camps in the Gaza Strip, there are ambulances that are being used to transport both terrorists and weapons for Hamas. Hamas uses civilian and medical assets for their own means. We've released photographs showing that their bases are located underneath hospitals. Their fuel is taken from hospitals. They have taken medicine from United Nations facilities and are refusing to give it to the people of Gaza. The human rights violations are in Gaza. They are wherever you see Hamas, where they are holding civilians at gunpoint, refusing to let them leave these areas, hoarding supplies, not giving medical attention, and have taken 241 of our people hostage. Those are human rights violations.
Even if there were combatants in those ambulances, there were also reportedly other patients too who died. Isn't such attack disproportionate? UN calls it violation of international law, humanitarian laws.
I will ask you a question. First of all, I will state that unfortunately, when terrorists take over ambulances or other facilities and pose an imminent threat, those assets, which are used really for the benefit of the civilian population, lose their protection. That is one of the horrible things when terrorists take over civilians and civilian targets. What is against international law, as I have already said to you, happened on October 7th, when innocent people were slaughtered in their homes, babies were beheaded, women were raped, including women who were dead. They raped dead women. They have a 9-month-old baby as a hostage in Gaza. How can we even speak about Israel violating human rights when we are here to defend our country, when Hamas's very existence violates human rights for the people of Israel and for the people of Gaza?
Hamas is a non-state actor, whereas Israel is a responsible nation state.
Israel certainly is a responsible nation state. We are responsible for ensuring, first and foremost, the safety of our civilians. No country, including India, would allow a murderous regime, a mass murderous regime that killed and wreaked such a massacre on its population to still exist. If we did not seek to destroy Hamas, we would not be a responsible actor. Hamas, you are correct, is not a responsible actor. They are an arbiter of evil. They're dedicated to evil. Their charter calls for the destruction of the Jewish people and the destruction of the state of Israel. When they planned this attack many months ago, they scripted this just like a play. And part of what they knew after they massacred and fled back to Gaza was how to divert the world's attention from Hamas. The way they do this is by putting their civilians in front of fire. So when their civilians are killed, the questions are directed at Israel instead of where they need to be directed, which is at Hamas.
What about the alleged attack on the UNRWA-run schools in
The
Jabalia?
UNRWA, I will tell you that we never purposely attack schools or hospitals. The terrorists are firing, and we will provide footage of this from schools. You have terrorists that are going into school compounds and firing rockets, shooting from hospitals. Our forces are on the ground to try to minimize civilian damage. If the IDF wanted to, we could destroy Hamas from the air. But because we know there are civilians, we're risking our own lives. It's a very heavy price to pay. And at times when they're fighting near those schools, perhaps shrapnel, other things may hit those walls, but they are there because Hamas is operating there. I do not hear you asking me any questions. What about the human rights violations of Hamas? And this is playing into Hamas's hands. This is what they wanted to happen.
According to reports, there are still thousands of civilians in north of Gaza, which is today an intense battlefield. Is this something you can confirm?
Of course, this is something we confirm every hour because we keep calling on these people to leave. We have been, for 2.5 weeks, paused much of our operational activities in order to enable those people to leave northern Gaza to southern Gaza. We have called upon them. We have dropped leaflets. We have sent them messages. There's not a single person in northern Gaza that does not know today that they need to leave. It is with a very heavy heart that I say that many of them are still there. They're risking their own life.
What stops them?
So what stops them in many cases, the ones who are left, is one of two things. Either for some reason they refuse to leave, which we tell them is a horrible mistake, or in many cases, and we have confirmed this, we have provided evidence of this in recordings and videos, Hamas is holding them there at gunpoint, which is in contravention of international law.
How much of a challenge for the IDF is Gaza's underground network of tunnels?
Extremely challenging. Hamas, again, scripted this well in advance. The international community gave billions of dollars of aid to the residents of Gaza. Unfortunately, that aid money was stolen by Hamas for all of these years. Instead of building universities and schools and hospitals and fuel facilities and water salination facilities, they built this underground network of hundreds of kilometers of tunnels used for one purpose, for terror, to hide terror activities beneath civilians. It is very difficult, and that is why it will take us considerable amount of time to achieve our goals.
Major, how tense is the situation in your northern border? How prepared are you to face intensification of battle by Hezbollah?
We are fully prepared on all of our borders. We have had a massive mobilization today of men, women, and children. I recently received notification that a young boy who lives across the street from me was killed in the last 24 hours. He got married 6 weeks ago. This is what it is to be in Israel today. We are a small country, a small number of people, mothers, fathers, brothers, and sisters are all fighting to save our borders at a very great cost. But we are ready for anything that will come our way. Anything that will come our way, we are ready for, and including any threats on the northern border. We have been calling on the northern border, on Hezbollah, to stay out of this, to enable us to focus on Hamas. We know that they, with Iranian funding, along with the Houthis and all these other Iranian proxy regimes, are trying to distract us from our goal in Gaza. We have said to them to stay out of this, but if they decide to threaten us, which they have, with rockets and missiles, we will hit them back very hard.
Are you also prepared for a multi-front conflict along with your northern and southern borders? Red Sea also appears to be red hot.
We prefer to not have a multi-front border. We are not seeking war, but if somebody does come to threaten the state of Israel and the citizens of Israel, we are prepared and ready to respond to any threat.
Major, due to the huge pile and cache of arms that Hezbollah sits on, is it correct to say that Hezbollah is a greater threat to the state of Israel than Hamas is?
Hezbollah is a greater threat to humanity than Hamas is. It is deciding which one is more evil. Hamas is an evil threat to Israel and the world, but Hezbollah is a much larger army. They have hundreds of thousands of rockets, where Hamas has tens of thousands of rockets. They have been funded by Iran for 40 years. They are an international terror actor that has blown up Israeli embassies in Buenos Aires, killed American soldiers. Before 9/11, more Americans have been killed by Hezbollah than by any other terror organization. Therefore, Hezbollah is a major concern. It is a world sponsor of terror, and therefore needs to be understood by the world what that means. And we are ready, though preferring that they do not enter this foray.
The US says for now they seem to be deterred. Is that something you feel on the ground too? Or is it otherwise?
We are ready for anything. We do not take anything for granted. We are certainly not going to take for granted that Hezbollah, they have been shooting rockets, mortar fire, infiltration attempts. This is not the behavior of somebody who is trying to stay quiet. At the same time, we are not looking to escalate in the north.
Thank you very much, Major. Thank you very much for talking to Tanti TV.
Thank you very much.